The great silver ship moved slowly through the bright blue sky of Earth. People on the streets stopped to watch as it floated above the city. The ship was shaped like a smooth bird, with wings that seemed to shine in the sunlight. It was the royal vessel of the Solari Empire, and it carried Princess Mira, daughter of the Solari Queen. Mira stood near the viewing window inside the ship. Her large dark eyes studied the city below. Tall buildings made of glass reached for the sky. Roads were full of fast-moving ground vehicles. She saw parks with green trees and children running and laughing. The scene was calm, but she could feel something powerful in the air. This was not the Earth she had read about in her lessons. This Earth was proud and strong. The ship landed on a wide platform beside the Earth Capitol Hall. Hundreds of people had gathered to see her. They waved flags and held signs with messages of peace. A group of human officials waited at the front, wearing formal uniforms. Mira stepped out of the ship and was greeted by the Earth Governor, a tall man with silver hair. He smiled warmly. "Welcome, Princess Mira. We are honored to have you here," the governor said. "I thank you for your welcome," Mira replied in her clear, calm voice. She had practiced the human language for years, but this was the first time she spoke it on Earth. As they walked together into the hall, photographers took pictures. The air was full of voices and the sound of music from a small human band. Mira kept her head high, wearing her royal robe made of pale gold fabric. But inside, she felt unsure. The war between the Solari and humans had ended only 2 years ago. In her homeworld's history books, the story was simple. The Solari had been generous and had offered peace. After the humans showed bravery, according to her teachers, the Solari fleet had been winning until they decided to stop. But the faces of the humans told her there was more to the story. Their smiles were full of quiet pride, not gratitude. The first event of her visit was a tour of the Earth Cultural Museum. Inside, the halls were filled with displays of human art, technology, and history. Mira walked slowly, studying everything. Then they entered a section called the Great Defense. She stopped at the entrance. The walls here were covered with large pictures of starships in battle. Holograms showed scenes of the final days of the war. There were images of humans standing on the bridges of their ships, giving orders. There were recordings of cheers as battles ended. Mira's guide, a young human woman named Leela, began to explain. "This is where we tell the story of how our people stood together and fought for freedom. The turning point was the battle at Orion Passage." Mira frowned slightly. In Solari records, Orion Passage was a minor battle. But here, it was described as the moment humans began to win. She moved closer to a large screen showing a human fleet moving through space. In perfect formation, in the center of the formation, was a ship marked with a bright red emblem. The camera view moved inside the command deck, where a man stood in a dark uniform. His hair was short, and his face was calm but focused. Something inside Mira stirred. She knew that face. It was older, sharper, and more serious than she remembered. But it was the same. Tom. She had known him when she was young, before the war. During a short exchange between their worlds, he had been a curious boy who asked many questions. They had explored the gardens of the Solari Palace together and talked about the stars. On the last day, he had told her, "No matter what happens, I will never be your enemy." But soon after, he disappeared. Her family told her he had been sent back to Earth. Later, she heard rumors. He had been taken away for special questioning because he had learned too much about Solari politics. She never saw him again. Her heart beat faster as she stared at the image of him leading a human fleet. Could it really be him? Could this quiet boy from her past be the same man who helped win the war against her people? Lila's voice brought her back to the moment. This man, Admiral Thomas Rain, led the strategy that forced the Solari fleet to retreat. He is considered a hero of Earth. Mira stayed quiet. She did not tell Lila that she knew him. She did not say that in her mind. He was still the young boy who had promised peace. After the museum visit, Mira returned to her guest quarters in the Earth capital. She sat by the window, watching the sunset over the city. Lights began to glow in the buildings, and the streets filled with people. It was beautiful, Yet her thoughts were far away. If Tom was alive, why had he not tried to contact her? Did he still remember their friendship? Or had the war changed him so much that he saw her only as a princess of an enemy empire? She thought of the way the humans looked at their history compared to the Solari version. Two stories about the same war, but only one could be true. The question was whose truth was real? A knock at the door broke her thoughts. Her guard stepped in and handed her a small card. There was no name, only a short message written in neat human letters. "We need to talk." I kept my promise. Mira's hands trembled as she held the card. The words brought back the sound of his voice in the palace garden. She read the message again and again. Somewhere in this city, her old friend was waiting, and now she had to decide whether to find him or leave the past buried. The night in the Earth capital was quiet, yet full of life. Outside Princess Mira's window, the streets were lit with soft golden lamps. Music drifted up from a nearby plaza where people gathered to sing. Mira sat in her chair, holding the small card in her hands. The message was short, but it carried the weight of years. "We need to talk. I kept my promise." She read it again, trying to decide if it could truly be from Tom. Her memories of him were vivid. He had been quick to smile, eager to learn, and brave, in ways that had surprised her. But the man she saw in the museum's hologram had been different, serious, hardened by command. Could that man still be the boy she once knew? Mira placed the card in a small pouch inside her robe. She decided she would not tell her guards or the Earth officials about it, for now. It was hers alone. The next day's schedule began early. The humans had arranged for her to meet scientists, artists, and cultural leaders. It was meant to show her the spirit of Earth beyond its military power. She smiled politely and listened to speeches, but her mind kept wandering back to the card. By midday, her group visited a large square at the center of the city. A fountain sprayed cool water into the air, and people gathered around to rest. As Mira looked around, her eyes caught sight of something strange. Near the edge of the crowd stood a man in a dark coat. His face was partly hidden by the shadow of a tree, but his eyes were locked on her. He did not wave or call out, yet his gaze was steady, almost challenging. Mira's heart gave a sudden jolt. She knew those eyes. Before she could move toward him, a group of children ran between them, laughing and chasing a ball. When she looked back, the man was gone. That night, as the Earth's moon rose over the city, Mira asked her guard for some privacy. She told him she needed to meditate in her quarters. When she was finally alone, she took the card from her pouch. Turning it over, she noticed faint markings on the back, almost invisible unless held under the light. They formed a set of coordinates and a time. The meeting was for tomorrow night, in a place called Harbor District. She knew the name from her lessons about Earth cities. The Harbor District was an old area near the water, filled with warehouses and quiet streets. It was far from the government buildings, which meant fewer eyes watching. The next day felt longer than usual. Every handshake, every polite exchange, seemed to pull her further from the moment she was waiting for. Finally, the sun set and the sky turned dark blue. Mira told her guards she wished to rest early. Once they were gone, she put on a simple travel cloak, hiding her royal robe beneath it. She left the building through a service exit and took a small electric transport she had arranged secretly. The driver asked no questions, only followed the coordinates she gave. The city lights faded as they moved closer to the water. The harbor district was quiet, the air smelling of salt and metal. Old ships rested in the docks, and the sound of gentle waves echoed in the night. The driver stopped near an abandoned dockyard. Its gates open and rusted. Mira stepped out, her shoes crunching lightly on the gravel. The only light came from a flickering street lamp near the water. She walked slowly, every step measured. A shadow moved between two warehouses. She stopped, her heart beating faster. From the darkness, a figure stepped forward. The man wore the same dark coat she had seen before. His hair was shorter than she remembered, his face marked by years of responsibility. But his eyes were the same. "Mira," he said softly. The sound of her name in his voice was like hearing an old melody. "Tom," she replied. They stood for A moment, simply looking at each other. The silence between them was filled with years of unspoken questions. I wasn't sure you would come. Tom said. I wasn't sure it was really you, she answered. In the museum, I saw you. They called you Admiral Thomas Rain. That's what they call me now, he said with a faint smile. But I am still Tom, at least to you. Mira stepped closer. They say you won the war. Tom's eyes darkened slightly. I didn't win it alone, but I helped change how it ended. I had to keep my promise to you. Her breath caught. You mean what you said in the garden? He nodded. I told you we would never be enemies. When the war began, I fought for my people, yes, but I also fought to make sure it didn't end with one side destroyed. I knew your people would never surrender, and I knew mine would never stop fighting unless something changed. Mira searched his face. Then tell me, what really happened? The Scifi records say we were winning until we chose peace. The humans say they forced our retreat. Tom's voice was steady. Both stories hide the truth. The Scifi fleet was stronger at first, but humans began working together in ways your commanders couldn't predict. Independent crews made fast decisions without waiting for orders. We learned to adapt faster than your systems could respond. When we struck at Orion Passage, it wasn't just a battle that broke the pattern your fleet relied on. After that, the Scifi couldn't keep control of the war. Mira lowered her gaze. So, my people lied to protect their pride. Tom's tone softened, and mine told their own version to inspire victory. Both sides shaped the truth, but I made sure the peace terms left your world standing. I didn't want to see Solar burned. For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of the water filled the space between them. Mira finally said, if what you say is true, then both our histories are wrong. What happens if I tell my people? Tom looked toward the dark water. Then you risk everything. But maybe it's the only way to keep the peace from breaking. Mira felt the weight of his words. This meeting was not just about friendship. It was about the future of two worlds. Somewhere deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, Princess Mira woke early. She had barely slept after meeting Tom. His words stayed in her mind, turning over and over like pieces of a puzzle. She now knew the truth was far more complicated than either side admitted. Yet she also understood the danger of speaking it aloud. If the Scifi royal court learned she had met Tom in secret, they would see it as betrayal. If the human officials discovered it, they might suspect her of plotting. The day's schedule was filled with public events. The first was a ceremony. In the Grand Assembly Plaza, thousands of humans were gathered there, waiting to hear speeches from leaders of both worlds. Flags of Earth and the Scifi Empire hung side by side, their colors bright in the morning sun. Mira stood with the governor and other dignitaries on the high stage. She kept her expression calm, but her eyes scanned the crowd. She was not sure what she was looking for until she saw him. Among the sea of faces stood a man in a plain jacket. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes were fixed on her. He was too far for her to see clearly, yet something about the way he stood made her think of Tom. She blinked, and the crowd shifted. When she looked again, the man was gone. She told herself it was probably not him. Tom would not risk appearing here in public after their meeting. Yet the thought stayed with her as the speeches began. The governor spoke first, praising the peace between humans and Scifi. His voice carried across the plaza, and the crowd cheered at his words. Mira followed. With her own speech, she spoke of unity, shared goals, and the hope of building a better future together. The audience listened politely, but she noticed some faces in the crowd that were cold, even hostile. Not all humans had forgiven the Scifi for the war. After the ceremony, Mira walked through the plaza with her guards. The people came closer now, offering flowers or asking for photographs. She smiled and accepted their greetings. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw a movement. A figure slipped into an alley between two buildings. It was quick, almost like a shadow. Mira felt a strange pull, as if she was being invited to follow. She glanced at her guards and said she wished to see more of the local streets. They hesitated but obeyed, walking with her as she moved toward The alley dot. When she reached the entrance, she looked down its narrow path. It was empty, just walls, trash bins, and a single door half open. Something about the door made her step forward. She placed her hand against it and pushed gently. Inside was a small room filled with shelves of books and old maps. A man sat at a table in the corner, his back to her. "Tom," she said softly. The man turned, and her heart sank. It was not Tom, but someone she did not know. He was older, with a lined face and sharp eyes. "You are looking for him," the man said. As if reading her thoughts, Mira took a step back. "Who are you?" "A friend," he said. "And if you are wise, you will be careful. There are people watching both of you." "What do you mean?" she asked. The man leaned forward. "The war may be over, Princess, but there are those who wish it had ended differently. Some Scifi leaders want revenge. Some humans want to strike first. Tom is caught in the middle because he worked to stop the destruction. That makes him a target." Mira's chest tightened. "Where is he now?" "I cannot say," the man replied. "But I can tell you this: he will try to speak with you again. And when he does, you must decide whether to stand with him or walk away. There will be no middle path." Before she could ask more, her guards called from outside, saying it was time to return. Mira gave the man one last look, but his attention was already back on the maps in front of him. She left the room, her mind spinning with questions. That evening, she attended a formal dinner hosted by the Earth Council. The hall was filled with music and soft light. Leaders from many nations and colonies were there, along with Scifi diplomats. She smiled, exchanged polite words, and listened to speeches about cooperation. But under the surface, she felt tension. Every glance seemed to hide another meaning. During the dinner, she noticed a folded piece of paper under her plate. She waited until no one was watching and slipped it into her robe. Later, in the privacy of her quarters, she opened it. The message was simple: tomorrow, the old lighthouse. She remembered hearing about the old lighthouse during her studies. It stood at the far end of the harbor, unused for years, but still tall and visible from the city. Mira sat in the quiet room, holding the note. She thought about Tom, the stranger in the bookshop, and the warning about danger. She also thought about the pride of her family, the rules of her empire, and the fragile trust between their worlds. If she went to the lighthouse, she might learn more about the truth, but she would also risk being seen with Tom again. If she stayed away, she would remain safe but blind. Mira stood and walked to the window. The moonlight reflected off the water, pointing a silver path toward the harbor. Somewhere out there, Tom was waiting. She already knew what choice she would make. The night was cool, and the city lights glowed behind her as Princess Mira walked along the quiet streets. Near the harbor, she wore a simple dark cloak with the hood pulled over her head. The old lighthouse stood at the far end of the pier, its tall shape outlined against the starlit sky. Waves struck the rocks below with a steady sound. She kept her pace steady, careful not to draw attention. The harbor was almost empty at this hour, only a few fishermen finishing their work. When she reached the base of the lighthouse, she found the door slightly open. A faint light shone from inside. Mira stepped through and closed the door behind her. The air smelled of salt and old wood. A narrow spiral staircase led upward. She began to climb, her footsteps soft against the worn steps. Halfway up, she heard a voice. "You came." She looked up to see Tom standing near the top platform. He was dressed in simple clothing, but the way he carried himself showed the discipline of a leader. His eyes softened when he saw her. "I had to," she said. "You left me no choice." He gave a small smile. Then it worked. They walked to the railing, where the view stretched across the dark water. The city was a distant glow. Here, they were hidden from the eyes of both humans and Scifi. "I wanted you to meet here because it is safe," Tom began. "No cameras, no guards. We can speak freely." Mira's voice was low. "Someone warned me yesterday that you are in danger. They said both humans and Scifi are watching you." Tom nodded. "It's true. The war ended, but not for everyone. Some Scifi generals still dream of revenge. Some human leaders fear your empire will attack again. I am caught in the middle because I refuse to destroy your worlds. I made enemies on both sides. Mira looked out at the sea. And you think, I can help you? I know you can. He replied, you are a princess. You have influence in your court. If you and I work together, we can keep the peace alive. But you must know the truth first. She turned to face him. Then tell me everything, Tom. Leaning on the railing. When I escaped from Solar years ago, I returned to Earth with more than just memories. I carried knowledge about Solari's strategy, their ships, and their command structure. At first, I used it to help humans survive. But as the war went on, I saw that a complete victory for humans would mean the destruction of your people. I could not allow that, so I built a plan to win without killing everything in our path. Mira listened closely. What plan? We studied your fleet's patterns, Tom said. Solari commanders made decisions slowly because orders came from the top. Humans began fighting in smaller groups, each one free to adapt in the moment. At Orion Passage, we broke your control system completely. After that, your fleet could not hold the line. That's when the Solari leadership decided to accept peace. They told your people it was their choice to stop. But the truth is, they had no other path. Mira took a slow breath. I was taught we ended the war out of generosity. Tom's eyes were steady. That is the story they wanted you to believe. But there is something else you must know. There are forces now, on both sides, trying to restart the war. They believe peace is only temporary. Mira's heart tightened. If that happens, millions will die. That is why I reached out to you, Tom said firmly. You are one of the few Solari leaders who has seen Earth with open eyes. You can speak to your queen. You can warn her before the generals act. She looked at him sharply. You think she will believe me? He paused. I think she will listen if you bring proof. And where would I find proof? Tom reached into his coat and pulled out a small data crystal. He held it out to her. This contains intercepted messages from Solari generals to human extremists. They are working together to create a conflict. They plan attacks that will make it look like one side is breaking the peace. Mira's eyes widened. You have this and you are still alive. Tom gave a faint smile. Not for lack of trying. On their part, I move often. I trust very few people. But you, I trust you. She took the crystal, feeling its smooth surface. If I bring this to Solara, my mother will know I met you. Yes, he said quietly. But she will also see the truth. And if she acts quickly, she can stop what is coming. They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the wind against the lighthouse. Then Mira spoke again. If I do this, I will have to be careful. There are those in the court who will call me a traitor for speaking to you. And there are those on Earth who already call me a traitor for speaking to you, Tom said. But that is the price of peace. It will never survive without people willing to protect it from both sides. Mira looked at him, seeing not just the boy she once knew, but the man he had become, a man willing to risk everything for more than just victory. I will take the crystal, she said. But after that, what happens? I will remain here for now, he replied. There is more I need to uncover. If you succeed in warning your queen, we will need to work together again. If you fail, then we may see each other next in the middle of another war. The thought sent a chill through her. She tucked the crystal safely inside her cloak. I will not fail. Tom gave a short nod. Then go. And be careful. You are not the only one being watched. She turned to leave, pausing at the top of the stairs. Tom, thank you for keeping your promise. His voice followed her down the steps. And thank you for giving me a reason to keep it. Outside, the night air felt sharper. Mira walked away from the lighthouse, the crystal hidden against her heart. She knew that from this moment on, her visit to Earth was no longer just a diplomatic mission. It was the beginning of a dangerous game, one where the prize was the future of two worlds. The morning after the lighthouse meeting, Princess Mira stood by her window in the Earth capital guest quarters. The city was waking up, but her thoughts were still in the quiet dark of the night. Before, the small data crystal Tom had given her felt heavier than any jewel she had ever worn. Inside it, the truth weighted messages that could save the peace or destroy it. She hid the crystal inside the lining of her robe. No one in her entourage could know she had it. Her guards were loyal to the Solari court, but loyalty to the court did not always mean loyalty to truth. If one of them discovered the crystal, they might report it to her mother's advisors before she could present it herself. The day's schedule was filled with more public appearances. Mira kept her posture calm and her words careful, but she noticed more eyes on her than before. Some were curious, some suspicious. At lunch, she caught one of her guards whispering to another and glancing in her direction. After the event ended, she returned to her quarters to find a message from the Solari ambassador. It requested a private meeting in his office that evening. The note said it was urgent and concerned her safety. When the time came, she went to the ambassador's office in the Solari embassy. The building was quiet, the corridors lit with soft white light. The ambassador, a tall man named Varine, greeted her with a bow. His expression was polite, but his eyes searched her face. "Princess," he began, "I have received word from home. Certain members of the Royal Council are concerned about your movements here on Earth." "My movements?" Mira asked evenly. Varine gave a small nod. "You have been seen speaking to people outside the planned events, wandering in areas not approved for the visit. These things raise questions." Mira kept her voice steady. "I am here to learn about Earth. That requires seeing more than official stages and banquet halls." Varine's smile was thin, of course. "But there are also reports of a human naval officer attempting to approach you. Do you know who this might be?" Her heart skipped a beat. "No," she said firmly. "I have spoken with many people. I do not know them all." Varine studied her for a long moment, then leaned back in his chair. "Be careful, Princess. There are those who would use you to stir trouble between our worlds. It would be unfortunate if such a thing happened while you were under my care." She understood the hidden meaning he was warning her to stay within his control. She gave a polite farewell and left the office, but inside she felt the walls closing in. That night, she prepared for her departure from Earth. The visit was scheduled to end in 2 days, but she decided she must return home sooner. The crystal needed to reach her mother before anyone else could twist its meaning. She sent a message to her staff to arrange an early flight aboard her royal vessel the next morning. As she and her entourage prepared to leave the Earth capital, an unexpected delay occurred. The Solari vessel was suddenly declared under inspection by Earth security forces. An officer explained that there had been a tip about possible smuggled materials aboard. Mira kept her expression calm, but she knew this was no coincidence. Someone on either side did not want her to leave yet while the inspection took place. Mira stayed in a small waiting lounge. The room had one wall of glass looking over the spaceport. She noticed the human officials speaking quietly in the corner. When they left, she walked past the spot and found a discarded piece of paper on the floor. It was a list of passengers for her ship with her name circled in red. Before she could think about it, one of her guards approached. "Princess, there has been a change. We are to remain in the city until further notice." She nodded as if this was no problem. Inside, she was already making a plan. If she stayed, the crystal would be in greater danger. She could not simply wait for her enemies to act. That evening, she contacted a trusted member of her staff, a quiet Solari aide named Raylan. She had known him for years and believed his loyalty was to her, not just the court. She told him she needed a secure case for private documents and that it must be hidden within her personal luggage. Raylan asked no questions, only promised it would be done. But later that night, as she prepared to rest, she heard a faint click at her door. She stood still, listening. The door opened slightly, and a shadow moved inside. Mira stepped back, her hand near the alarm button. The figure moved toward her desk and began searching through the drawers. She recognized the shape one of her own guards. "What are you doing?" she demanded. The guard froze, then straightened slowly. "Princess, I was making sure your room was secure." Mira's voice was cold. "You are not assigned to search my desk." The guard gave a short bow and left without another word. She locked the door behind him. The message was clear. Someone in her own escort was looking for the crystal. The next morning, Mira changed her approach. She decided not to keep the crystal on her at all times. Instead, she hid it in the secure case Raylan had prepared, placing it in the bottom of her travel trunk. She knew it was still a risk, but carrying it with her would make her too obvious. A target, finally, after 2 more tense days. The inspection ended and her ship was cleared for departure. Mira boarded with her entourage, keeping her expression calm even as her heart raced. She took her seat by the window and watched the city fade away beneath them. As the ship rose into the dark sky, she thought of Tom, the lighthouse, and the dangerous truth inside the crystal. She knew the hardest part was still ahead. On Celara, the royal court would not welcome her with open arms for bringing such news. Some would try to silence her before she could speak. But she also knew something else turning away now would mean betraying the promise she had made to Tom. And to herself, she placed her hand over the spot where the crystal was hidden and whispered quietly, "We will see this through." The stars outside the window seemed to shimmer brighter, as if they too were listening. The night sky above the city was clear, and the stars shone brighter than ever. Mira stood on the tall balcony of the palace, looking at the world that had been saved. The city lights twinkled below, the streets were peaceful, and the sound of laughter could be heard from the people who were now free from fear. She had learned many things in the past weeks, but there was still one thing that weighed heavily on her mind. She needed to know how the final victory had been achieved. She knew the war was over, but the details were still a mystery. Everyone celebrated, but Mira had not yet received the full truth. The alien Princess Lyra walked beside her, holding a small crystal in her hand. The crystal pulsed faintly, as if it carried a memory. Mira looked at it with curiosity. "What is that?" she asked. "It is the final record," Lyra replied softly. "It holds the truth you seek, the truth of how the last battle ended and who made it possible." Mira's heart beat faster. She had heard rumors of a mysterious act of bravery that turned the tide of the war, but no one would tell her the details. Lyra motioned for her to follow. They walked down the quiet hallway, past the guards who bowed respectfully. They entered a chamber filled with floating holograms of star maps and battle formations. In the center of the room was a circular platform. Lyra placed the crystal on the platform, and instantly the air shimmered. A three-dimensional scene began to form before their eyes. Mira saw the battlefield vast, dark space lit by explosions, and streaks of energy weapons. Alien and human ships were locked in a deadly fight. The enemy's fleet was larger, stronger, and ready to crush the last line of defense. And then she saw him. A familiar figure stood on the bridge of a human flagship. His posture was confident, his eyes sharp. It was Aaron, her old friend. Mira's breath caught in her throat. She had not seen Aaron in years, not since he had left to join the defense forces. She thought he might have been lost in the early days of the war. But here he was, commanding the final stand. The vision showed him giving quick orders to his crew. They shifted the formation of the fleet, creating a narrow path for a group of fast attack ships to slip through the enemy lines. The enemy thought it was a retreat, but it was a trap. Aaron had predicted the enemy's movements perfectly. Mira watched as his ships launched a coordinated strike against the enemy's central command vessel. The enemy tried to counter, but it was too late. The explosion of the enemy's flagship lit up the scene, and chaos spread among their fleet. Aaron's voice echoed through the hologram. For Earth, for all free worlds now, the Allied fleets surged forward, breaking the enemy lines. One by one, enemy ships fell or fled. The war was over within hours of that decisive blow. The vision faded. The crystal's glow-dimmed dot. Mira stood frozen. Her heart was filled with pride and sorrow. Pride that Aaron had done what no one else could. Sorrow because she knew such victories always came with a cost. "Where is he now?" she asked quietly. Lyra's expression was gentle but solemn. After the battle, his ship was heavily damaged. It was last seen drifting toward the outer sectors. Rescue teams searched, but no trace was found. Some say he may still be alive. Others believe he gave his life for the final strike. Mira closed her eyes for a moment. She could almost hear his voice, calm and determined as it had always been. She remembered the days when they were young, when they would dream about the stars and speak of making a difference in the galaxy. He had made that dream real. As they left the chamber, Lyra placed a hand on Mira's shoulder. Your friend's courage ended the war. The worlds will honor him for generations. Outside, the city's celebrations continued. Fireworks lit the sky in bright colors. But for Mira, the victory was now deeply personal. She knew the truth at last, that the one who had saved them all was the same person who once walked beside her on quiet nights, speaking of hope. And in her heart, she made a silent promise she would find him, no matter how far she had to travel. Because some victories were not meant to be the end, they were only the beginning of another journey. The great hall of the council was silent. Rows of alien leaders sat in their tall chairs, their eyes fixed on the main stage. Bright crystal lights shone from the ceiling, making the polished floor glow. In the middle stood Mira, the alien princess, her golden robe flowing gently as she faced the crowd. Beside her was Aaron, the human who had fought and won the war. Everyone waited. The war had ended weeks ago, but the future was still uncertain. Old wounds between humans and aliens had not yet healed. Some leaders wanted to keep the alliance, while others feared it would bring new danger. Mira stepped forward. Her voice was calm but strong. Today is not about who won the war. It is about why we fought. We stood together because our worlds faced the same threat. Without unity, we would have all fallen. A murmur ran through the hall. Some nodded in agreement. Others remained cold. Aaron looked around. He could see the doubt in their faces. He remembered the long nights on the battlefield, the friends he had lost, and the moments when giving up would have been easier. But he also remembered why he kept fighting, not just for Earth, but for every living being who wanted peace. He took a step forward. I'm not here to rule, he said. I'm not here to take anything from your people. I fought because I believed. Your fight was also ours. If that makes me your friend, then I am proud to be called one. A hush followed his words. The leaders exchanged glances. For the first time, the tension in the room began to soften. Mira turned to him with a small smile. She knew his words carried more weight than any title or crown. Suddenly, the doors to the hall opened. A group of soldiers entered, carrying a large black case. Inside it was the enemy's command crystal, the heart of their war machines. It had been taken from the battlefield after the final fight. The crystal still glowed, faintly, but its power was broken. Mira addressed the council. This crystal was the source of their control over us. We could keep it as a weapon, but I believe it should be destroyed. Only then can we be free from fear. A debate began. Some leaders argued it should be studied. Others feared that destroying it would waste an advantage. Aaron listened for a while, then stepped forward again. If you keep it, he said, you will always be tempted to use it, and someone else will always try to take it. But if we destroy it together, no one will ever be able to use it for war again. His reasoning struck the council. Slowly, voices began to agree. The final decision was made. The crystal would be destroyed, and every leader present would take part so that the act would belong to all worlds, not just one. They carried the crystal to the central platform, where a great energy beam awaited. One by one, each leader placed their hand on the control ring. Finally, Mira and Aaron stepped forward together. The beam activated, striking the crystal. It shook, glowed brighter, and then shattered into 1,000 sparks that faded into nothing. The hall was silent again, but this time it was a peaceful silence. The symbol of fear was gone. After the ceremony, Mira and Aaron walked to the high balcony that overlooked the city. The alien towers gleamed in the sunlight, and the streets below were filled with both humans and aliens walking together. Mira spoke softly. When I first saw you again after so many years, I did not know you would be the one to end the war. Aaron smiled faintly. I didn't know either. I only knew that if I had a chance to help you, I would take it. She looked at him for a long moment. The war is over, but the work is not. There will be wounds to heal, trust to rebuild, and we'll do it together, Aaron said. They stood in silence for a while, watching the city breathe in its first true day of peace in years. Later that evening, The Council sent out a joint message to every world in the Alliance. It spoke of unity, of the cost of war, and of the promise of peace. It did not speak of victory in the way old wars had been remembered. Instead, it spoke of survival, friendship, and hope. When the message reached Earth, people filled the streets in celebration. On Mira's homeworld, citizens lit crystal lanterns and placed them along the rivers as a sign of new beginnings. In the days that followed, humans and aliens began working side by side to rebuild what had been lost. New trade routes were opened. Mixed crews served on the same ships, and shared schools taught children from both worlds. Mira continued her role as princess, guiding her people with a calmer heart. Aaron refused all offers of titles or wealth, choosing instead to help train a new defense force that would be made up of both humans and aliens. One night, as they stood again on the balcony, Mira looked at the stars. "Do you think there will be another war someday?" she asked. Aaron was quiet for a moment. "Maybe. But if there is, we'll face it together. And maybe next time, we'll end it before it begins." They shared a quiet smile. The stars above seemed brighter than before. Far away, beyond the edge of the known space, the remnants of the enemy fleet drifted in silence. They were broken, but not entirely gone. And though no one knew what future threats might come, the bond between Earth and Mira's world had become something stronger than any weapon. It was not just an alliance, it was a promise. And promises, once made between true friends, were not so easily broken.